Welcome, friends, to another episode of the E&J podcast.
I'm E, Erin.
And I am J, Jake. And we are here at the shop in Monterey, this amazing art collective, print shop,
Podcast space.
podcast
kitchen,
studio.
Co-op. Yeah.
Amazing.
Trading post.
Amazing facilities here. You folks should check out the website, come on down and give it a visit. Say what's up to Chris Powers here if you need any screen printing done.
It's Chris Powers _ Chris Powers.
On Instagram.
It's The Shop Monterey. And
he can do it all for you here.
Most hated lifestyle brands.
Awesome tagline. And so if you have any merch you want to get made, this is the place to do it.
Mm-hmm. T-shirts, aprons, you can do it all.
So
he also pulls that screen out into festivals and fairs and will pull prints
right
on the street.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. He'll be at the December night market doing specialized limited edition pulls just for that event. So
it's fun to see your shirt be made.
Mm-hmm.
Funny. Mm-hmm. So tell me about the night market. What is that?
The night market is a new endeavor from the Cali Roots Presents group.
Oh, cool.
And they are local. They live locally, but in their mind, and particularly it's a husband-wife team.
Mm-hmm. In
the wife's mind, when they started producing events, there was the community that she really liked about it. And Cali Roots is huge, so they started Good Vibes Presents, which is just community-based events, and focuses on sustainability, so it's as green as possible. Johnny Wicks will be there, and they made a call out to bring your own jars, and so they're trying to be super sustainable.
Nice. Good keyword.
Sexy. And there's going to be live music. There's going to be food vendors. They want it to be like an open bazaar sort of feel. And then it is in the Sand City Art Park. I can't believe you didn't catch that.
Jeez.
You were off your game tonight. And then it's in conjunction with the Sand City First Friday, which around Ortiz and Redwood Avenue, places like Sylvan Gallery will have their doors open. The Monterey Glassworks will have their doors open, which is a fun new hot shop where they do design of lighting, and you can get your own glassware made with specifics and colors. But then they also have a hot shop, they have the kilns right there, and they have workshops, and the people are actively making in the space, as well as having this design portion. So they're going to be open and doing demos, and so it's kind of come and enjoy the night market, and then go out and pop in to the studios and the businesses. Post No Bills obviously will be open, and they also want to try to make it a very interactive event. They want people to stay. So
what do you mean? Recurring?
No, they want people to stay and hang out and do stuff. So they have tables, they have heaters, they have a band. The Basement is going to be playing. The Basement, BASS Mint.
Nice.
Follow them on Instagram. One Deer Hanif is one of their is the lead singer, and then Chelsea Riddle, Ridiculous, is also in it. So there's going to be music, there's going to be food, there's going to be alcohol, there's going to be cornhole. So Shelby and the good folks at Sand City have let us borrow some of their cornhole league setup, and then there's going to be game tables where we have giant Jenga, and
wow, that sounds like a fun event.
Yeah, and then on our side, so the Arts Council will be there, and we'll be painting birdhouses, and there's a soap, and I apologize, I don't know the soap company off the top of my head, but you can actually cut your own squares. Johnny will be there. Wicks.
Oh, cool.
Johnny Wicks Candles, locally lit.
Locally lit.
And so you can, if you bring your jars, you can pour candles. They'll probably have jars there too, but have people doing activities. And then Avellino is going to be doing the Progress Not Perfection parties, because Jess is in Greece having her artistic dream realized.
Beautiful.
So he's got 2 big tents, and he's gonna have canvases, and people can just saddle up and paint something. So there's a lot of interactives and a lot of activities, and they want people to actually come and hang out.
What's the timeline of the event like?
It's 5 to 9 p.m. on Friday, November 5th is the first one.
Okay.
And then hopefully it will continue to be the first Friday of every month in conjunction with the Sand City First Friday, where you start here, where there's this center bazaar, and then there's the businesses and shops and galleries around the edges where you can circle back through. So
very cool idea.
Because I don't want it to just be, like some festivals or street fairs around here. You can kind of just like do the circuit in like 15 minutes and you kind of feel like you've seen everything. So the intention is to make each one different. So not to blow it all out in November, but to be very mindful about
designing
who they're using and why they're using. So I don't think we were recording when we talked that Chris Powers is going to pull a special design in December. So she wants to space out the talent and really make it an interactive, event.
It's a curated event.
Yeah, they want people to come and learn stuff and be hands-on and stay.
Yeah, so it's kind of designed for that flow of activities.
there's chili cheesesteak, there's tacos. I mean, all of this stuff is online, so I apologize for not having all of these.
No.
But we're just a partner of the Good Vibes.
Sounds like a great event to go to.
Presents.
A lot of fun,
And that's
lot of
Vibes
people
with
you
a
can
Z. Good
Nice.
Vibes Presents.
Yeah.
And hopefully this will just be one of many new, especially making use of that art park in Sand City. I mean, it's just so perfect for events.
Rad. I can't wait to check it out.
Yeah, just take some photos. And it's kid friendly too, I mean, not all kids will be up until 9, but from 5 to 8, you can imagine people will probably be like, oh sweet, we don't have to make dinner tonight because we'll just get some cheesesteaks and
Fun Friday night activity.
cut some bars. So yeah.
I dig it. And so for Big Pete's, we sponsored the Cali Roots experience, the first one they did back earlier this summer when Jay Boog headlined.
At the West End. Was it in conjunction with the West End at the end of August? At the end of August.
Forget the date of it.
Yeah, the 27th, I think. It's a Saturday.
It was a Saturday, yeah.
I remember because I was working the West End, and on Saturday, the day that you could just walk to the Cali Roots experience, the gates opened at 4. The West End was like a super party vibe. Like everybody was getting ready.
What's the West End?
The West End celebration?
Don't know it.
Oh, that's too bad. The West End is what people call like the Sand City district. So the West End celebration, I believe it's been about 15 years, and it's an adult centered art party.
Oh, cool.
For lack of a better term. It goes along Ortiz, and this year I went on Ortiz and then up Redwood, so you did this like long rectangle because they were trying new things.
Nice.
This year was in conjunction with the We Create Mural Week. So a week before the West End celebration, the 30 muralists chosen started their murals, and at the end of the week the murals were mostly completed, and then the West End celebration happened on Saturday and Sunday. And it's all artists, all the guys from the shop were there, and it's 4 stages on each corner, basically. And some food, and it was pared down this year from what has been in the past, but it was still like on the Saturday when Cali Roots was happening, like right after, it was just such a huge party vibe. It was intense. It was the first time that I've been in a festival situation in a long time, but people were just like super amped up.
They're pent up.
There was, I mean, there's alcohol at the West End. Post No Bills is there. There was the El Jefe, margarita carts, and so the booze flowing, the music's flowing, and then pretty much you can walk almost to the fairgrounds to the Cali Roots. So it was just like a lot of people like pre-partying before the whole night of. But it was great, and they just showcase local talent, local musicians, local artists. They have Big Sur Jade, they have all the shop guys, us with the Arts Council, and people come and talk about recycling and all sorts of weird stuff. But it's the celebration in Sand City at the end of August, and now it happens to be
annual end of summer celebration in Sand City.
A weekend-long thing that now is in conjunction with their mural celebration, which has now happened 2 years in a row. So I think it's going to be a thing.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That was probably a good way to break that drought. That's what it felt like for the Cali Roots Festival. It was like,
yeah, and I saw the owners of Cali Roots the next day, Sunday, at the West End, and they were very pleased and had a great time. I mean, we're just tired. It's a lot of energy to like throw an event of that size, and it's hard because vendors are having a really hard time. And I've seen this at all the festivals I've been to, and even at the Jazz Festival, which I was at most recently. Vendors are having a really hard time gauging how much they need and like to have enough product. It's like you don't want to be the one that sells out on the first day. And Cali Roots is, the normal Cali Roots is a 4-day experience, so it's like, it's just a weird time too from the vendor side of it to make sure that, to gauge like how many people you're going to have, how much food do you prepare, like really, and how many candles do you bring, and all of a sudden you're like, not that happened with any candles that I know of, but.
It seemed like everything went pretty smoothly from my view of things.
And everything did. I'm not saying this about Cali Roots. I'm just saying in general, it's a challenge.
Oh, I believe that.
For all the festivals.
That's a challenge.
Especially a multi-day.
In general, but especially in this time of uncertainty, I'm sure it was even harder.
It was really nice on Sunday, though, to have it be like much slower pace. It's like Saturday, when I finally put the 2 and 2 together, I'm like, oh, there's all these people here also that are about to go to the Cali Roots experience.
Yeah.
And Sunday was just like.
Oh, so it's a 2-day thing.
It's a 2-day. It's a Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, cool.
And in normal times too, sometimes there's a lot of parties that happen on Friday night, but a lot of those were not COVID friendly this year. So it could be a whole week thing depending on.
So Sand City is a little wild.
Can be.
Sand City sounds like a little fun spot.
It can be.
Okay. Good to know.
It's always been known as an artist enclave. It's always been known as an artistic place. And then there was a big development that was approved and started called the South of Tioga development, which historically displaced a lot of artist spaces and warehouses that were used for artists. And so there's also a feeling of this like artistic depression in Sand City when this big development came in, and it's still happening. They've now switched contractors, but basically the plan is to create a giant multi-use construction in downtown Sand City that has everything from like retail on the bottom to condominiums on the top, and it's going to be a huge installation.
Yeah. It's interesting. It seems like there's a lot of big projects that are kind of underway.
In Sand City?
Just in general, like.
Sand City's got something to do with it.
Okay.
Right? Because they have a very low population and a lot of box stores, so they make a lot of money.
Oh. That's good to know.
Yeah, good industrial spaces.
I mean, I think that's kind of the story of artists in general, right? Like
displacement.
Yeah, well, finding the open space that's
finding the open affordable
available
space
and making the most of it, and then making it hot, making it pop, and then money comes in and builds up around it. So when I was in New York for my semester that I spent in New York, I had an internship in Soho, and it was this Sigrid Burton, this artist who was, a really great artist, but they owned this floor of this building, and Soho now is like, it's the shopping district of the world. It's like, couldn't be more expensive. So from their window, you would look across and see Willem Dafoe's loft.
Mm-hmm.
But that was where the lofts were, Soho. Right? And so that's just the age-old story of art, I think.
Like little artistic communes and utopias get turned into taken over by.
They make it cool, and brands come in and take advantage of it. But I think it's sort of a natural progression.
So where do the artists go?
To the next spot. Artists always have to find the next spot. That's the thing. Unless they get established in that place. You know what I mean? Like, that could happen too.
Well, yeah, until they have a developer say, we bought this whole block and you have until the end of the year. Right.
But it just depends on the leverage of the artist.
True.
Right? Like, if you have somebody who, like Andy Warhol.
Well, I mean, the Arts Council brought a bunch of artists together before we opened the artworks, and we're like, what is the number one thing that artists in this community need?
Mm-hmm.
What's the number one thing this artist community need?
To sell their work.
Affordable studio space.
No, they need to sell their work. That's what I'm saying.
Well, they gotta have a place to do it
because they can afford it if they sell it.
Not necessarily.
But
I mean,
possibly.
For the rental market around here, that would take a very savvy and successful.
I think it would be the same in Manhattan.
Right, but we're talking about 1%. The highest places to live for artists, but also the epicenter of those places.
But also places where there is an art historical background, right? Like, there's history of art here. There's a lot of interesting art history here.
Yeah. No, I mean, Ansel Adams was here for a long time.
Edward Weston, Henry Miller.
It was a big enclave. Had all sorts of fun here.
Yeah, oh yeah, tons. Jack London wrote a novel called Valley of the Moon, and it's about this couple that they start out in Oakland, and he goes on strike for whatever his occupation is, and so he ends up going to jail, right? And so they decide, the city's not for us, and so they start traveling around the California countryside looking for the place they want to call home. It ends up being Sonoma, which is the meaning of Sonoma is Valley of the Moon. And that's where Jack London ended up building his ranch and his experimental farm, and where he drank himself to death. But during that process, they toured through Carmel. And there's a really interesting chapter. It's called the Abalone Divers. It's a chapter in the Valley of the Moon, which chronicles this place, turn of the last century. Super interesting that it was known for eccentric artists back then.
Yeah, and debauchery.
And debauchery, yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a new book, it might be called The Gilded Cage, but it's about, a couple and their third living person, in Carmel, and just the
experimental lifestyle.
Crazy fun they had.
Yes, and Henry Miller down in Big Sur.
Isn't it wild, though, that so many of those people now get offended by a painted nipple?
But do they really? Or do they just say that?
I don't know.
Now, the painted nipple is interesting. This is something that Instagram apparently allows, right?
Nipples or painted nipples?
Painted nipples.
Nipples that are painted, or a painting of nipples?
Painting of nipples.
Okay.
Don't know if the painting on nipples is okay or not. Haven't tested that.
You should. Let us know next week, Owen.
I mean, be happy to do that. But
that's your homework.
Okay, mission accepted. But no, that's funny. But okay, circling back to
the painted nipple. No, we're gonna talk about that. Cali being a crazy artist enclave.
To Cali roots being one of those heirs of the tradition, right? Because Monterey Fairgrounds. So when we were getting ready for that event, I was doing a little bit of research because we wrote a couple of blogs. We interviewed Zion from The Green. We interviewed Sarita, a musician, and I was just kind of researching like the background of Monterey Fairgrounds, and obviously it's most famous for
The Jazz Festival.
Before. No. So you don't know.
What?
It's where Jimi Hendrix got put on. And was that the Jazz Festival?
No, that was
Blues Festival. I think it was called the Blues Festival.
I mean, they were all here.
But that's
that one time.
So this was exactly. But so that was what put Jimi Hendrix on the map. That concert, and then they actually that was around the time of the Summer of Love. They were certain people were suggesting that concert actually sparked the Summer of Love, and that created this huge movement, this draw to come west to California, and this huge migration. All these people came across. One of my professors just published his life's work of poetry, and he was one of those guys. He ended up in California from Connecticut. But the other thing that happened from that,
isn't that still a thing? I mean, being from the East Coast myself.
Yeah, it still happens all the time. But that was one moment in history where a whole generation went, right? But so the other thing that happened, that was the hippie generation, right? Free love, Summer of Love. And then the other thing that happened from that is that sparked the whole cannabis growing movement in Northern California. Right? So that brought people over here, and then to find livelihood, they ended up growing cannabis.
That's a good story.
It's a great story because it's
now make it relevant to 2021.
That's what I'm saying. So now we have Cali roots, and we have Big Pete's, and we have.
And look what's on the back. Full circle, like a sign.
Yeah. So it is that kind of a thing where you have these historical echoes in a place, where something has happened there before. Where history was sparked, artistically. And so there's that kind of anticipation or expectation
I still want the churro.
Yeah, it's right here.
No, don't move it. You'll shock yourself. Ooh, I like the circle better.
Yeah, it's a red one. So it's just such a fun place down here because so many cool things in art have started here.
It can be pretty accepting of and also what is art. I think in this area and in Sand City is much more open-minded than some other communities. It's like, what is art? Including performance art, like fashion, like maybe even sculpture, but maybe not. But just like classically, what is art? There's always, if you want to have an experience, if you want to see a fashion show, then you can probably find that in Sand City. They're very accepting, I guess. And maybe that's the historical echoes, is it's just always been a very accepting place, right? The alternative living lifestyles and whatever.
Exactly. Someone's got to break the ice, and then once it's broken, everyone's in the water. And
we can have some cookie.
If you want to. I'm down.
Well, it depends. What are we going to talk about today?
Well,
sustainability is sexy. We do have to talk about the actual topic of the podcast.
Okay.
So we are sustainably supporting art in this community and keeping it going.
Well, exactly. And you see that art is able to sustain the story of art, the history of art, sustains itself through these little nodes, these little places on the map where that's happened, and so it attracts people to do that over and over again. It's kind of amazing how it works like that. Before cannabis is part of it too, right? Because cannabis and jazz, and that's all a part of the American aesthetic as far as art goes, right? Like abstract expressionism, directly influenced by jazz and spontaneity that jazz musicians tapped into by smoking cannabis.
And maybe some of those photographers too were here. I mean, all artists, I think, have tapped into cannabis and been inspired by it.
Yeah, but
But you're talking about California in this area specifically.
Well, but also just that for a long time it was such a legal consequence, cannabis was, that it really...
I know, isn't that mind-blowing?
It's mind-blowing.
From where we were in high school to where we are now, how quickly it's just like...
Yeah. But when it was
Status quo.
illegal, it kind of made those pockets more...
Well, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I think it's interesting what we have now is we have the possibility for that kind of movement, which involves art and culture and music, cannabis, to be in many different places than it has been before.
Well, and one way that a Cali Roots would present themselves is as conscience-minded funk, and you know they focus on the nonprofits and the sponsors that they get are like Save the Redwoods, and they have refill stations.
Yeah.
And they're very intentional about being as green as possible, and are also being that way with the night market 831 projects. So it's weird to hear myself in loop.
You know, I wonder what that... So the sustainability thing that's going on down here, because
that's also sexy.
it is.
To smart people who understand that, like, our Earth is finite and it's appreciated when people take the measures, go the extra distance to be green and be sustainable. That's sexy.
Exactly.
In my opinion.
I think so.
IMO.
Taking care of our resources is sexy. It is. But it's like...
To some. To those Californians. No, I'm just kidding. I probably just alienated. But not everybody.
Yeah, and I don't know. So, okay, I think possibly part of it has to do with the fact that we're here at the Monterey Bay, which is a marine sanctuary, an incredibly beautiful place. So much of our quality of life comes from just being able to walk out the door and the ocean's right there.
Right, and a lot of it is preserved.
Yeah, so I think that probably has a big influence on why people are more sustainably minded here, because we have this beautiful gem of...
To reference.
Yeah.
To learn from.
Yeah. But, so, one of the sustainable items that I have been marketing lately is directly related to that too. It's a salmon that is from a fishery, and so this is my theory, okay, is that sustainability is very, very important. It's the most important thing. There's nothing more important than that right now. But
But we're not just talking about environmentally. We're talking about making a sustainable lifestyle for your sustainable business.
Yeah. But also
fitness, sustaining
all of it.
All of it.
It all goes
not
together.
Just the environmental, though that is top and front of everyone's mind.
You gotta do that. You gotta do that. But so the thing is, why it's interesting in trying to market sustainable goods. You quickly come to realize what the sort of market tendencies are in that regard. But like the example I like to give is with hybrid technology in cars, like the Prius, which is probably the most ridiculed car of all time, right?
So far, yeah, maybe.
I mean,
in our lifetime.
Yeah, there may be some other.
Though Hertz just bought all of them, from what I can understand.
And I think it's a silly criticism, but it's sort of like I saw that whole movement as this kind of fear of an emasculation through sustainability.
Right. And now, how are they making electric vehicles appealing?
Well, Tesla.
No. What do they have now on the market that everybody's going to buy?
Truck.
An electric Ford 150. F-150. How many F-150s get bought?
Tons.
A year.
Tons.
Everybody buys Ford F-150. So now Ford has decided that they're going to put out the electric truck. And all those people who are emasculated by the idea of an electric Tesla can now have a Ford that's going to perform better than their gas version.
That's the evolution of it. That's what I'm talking about. But
They're
Tesla
was that critical piece that made it.
It was a little too metrosexual for the general public, I think. Tesla as a brand.
Probably, but the thing it did is, as far as performance goes, they Elon Musk took the performance. He understood, if we want this to sell, it's got to be better than the alternative. It can't just be morally better. It's got to perform better.
Well, then they should have not spent so much time worrying about auto drive and maybe a little more time on the basics. But that's just my opinion.
But clearly, it's worked.
No, I appreciate Tesla and all of their advancements. I hope to not buy another gas vehicle in my life.
Yeah.
But I don't want my first electric car to be a Tesla necessarily.
I mean,
but if they wanted to donate one to our podcast.
There is a Tesla factory right here in Seaside, and I was thinking about them as a sponsor.
Oh, I have Tesla solar panels, and I'm very happy.
I don't know if they're making the robots there. Be curious about
You
that.
want a robot? Or I just was talking about a car.
No, I just want to see them or interact with them or know what they're doing. The robots. But
are we going like Westworld on this, or are they like humanoid? Can you tell them
that's what's
apart?
happening. That's what's happening. You know, that is what is happening. So we should be paying attention to it. But my point is that Elon Musk knew you had to make sustainability sexy.
Well, he just didn't do a very good job. He was right, but he could have done better.
I mean,
branding is image.
And yet, possibly he could have done better, but he's poised to become the first trillionaire. I think that's probably an indication that he did a couple things all right. Mm-hmm. But certainly what it did is it accelerated the movement of sustainability because enough people thought that the performance of that car was sexy enough for them to buy into it.
Oh, yeah. It's like the upper echelon soccer mom car of California.
Yeah. But
people want that.
The Prius wasn't.
But the Prius is still extremely successful and everywhere in California. It's sexy because people understood the importance of it enough and early on that it's still extremely popular. But I know that in my generation, the people that had Priuses are now buying Teslas. So, you know.
If you ask somebody, a car enthusiast, what's a sexier car, Tesla or a Prius?
It's not even a comparison.
It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
And that's what I'm saying, that the sustainability movement has to understand market dynamics and that the general public isn't going to be swayed by moral decisions because once they start making those economic decisions, they get narcissistic, they get sociopathic, and they get greedy. They want power.
I was actually watching a webinar from out of state, or the woman was in state, but it was broadcast nationally, and she had to explain the car with her was a Prius and that they were very popular in California, and it just kind of like reminded me that we are unique in those ways because we see them Prius everywhere. I mean, everywhere.
And no, don't get me wrong, I love a Prius. Yeah, I would drive a Prius.
You also have to drive really far out here. I mean, living on the East Coast, you could get a lot of places within 2 hours. And that's not the case here. You're going to be in between a lot of places in 2 hours.
That's right. So driving is a factor in
here,
California.
For sure.
In California, period. It's almost nowhere that you can just live.
And a lot of people were living in or centered around cities where they commuted in and out of. like if you've ever tried to commute in LA, you're looking at least an hour each way, no matter how far you have to go.
That's what I'm saying. But so that's why
is that what you were saying?
Here, the whole question, I mean, the automobile transformed California, right?
Yes.
And so, you know, early on, before they had emissions regulations, during the first years that they built the highways, people were driving so much that people were dying from the pollution.
Oh, yeah, well, I can imagine that they were not the safest vehicles.
No. Not as far as their emissions.
Well, that too.
They were creating so much smog that they changed the air in LA in a matter of 2 years once the highways went in. And that's why they had to start regulating emissions on cars. And that's when they started realizing the effect that burning petroleum has. You know, it's each gallon. I've been doing this research because I'm based in Santa Cruz, as you know, and coming down here twice a week, I'm gonna try and commute by bike, and so.
And I support you.
Thank you. But in researching that, I decided, you know, what is the impact? You know, businesses measure their carbon footprint. So I thought, you know, let me look at what the carbon footprint for this one commute would be. And it's disgustingly huge. It's like, it would take, 1 year would be 9,000 miles. It would take 350 gallons. Each gallon of gas creates 20 pounds of carbon dioxide.
That's crazy.
And a fully mature tree sequesters 24 pounds of carbon dioxide a year. So this one drive, one guy would be making, would need an entire forest to offset the carbon. Or I could ride my bike, which would be a lot harder. I'd get into a lot better shape. And I would not be putting thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So when you start,
it's disturbing how much that is.
It's disturbing, but you would think but it just shows how we're not motivated by being disturbed. We are motivated with our attention. We go to the disturbing stuff with our attention.
But we're motivated by easy solutions.
Oh yeah, convenience is a huge motivator.
Especially
laziness.
If you can get what you want easily.
Yes, and it's just, you know, it's like that test that they do with different, you know, psychological test of
like the Rorschach test.
If you take the sugar now, then you get this much of it, but if you wait for an hour, then you get way more. Right? And it's like,
patience is learned.
It is, but you would think that
people would wait.
They might be more important to us. But there seems to be, in the buying impulse, there seems to be this tendency that if we want to have sustainability, then we have to understand how people are spending their money, why they're spending their money, what they're thinking about, the psychology behind it. And that's why I think you have to make sustainability sexy.
So let's talk about how Santa Cruz Fish Co. is making sustainability sexy.
Well, it's the Tesla of fish.
Okay.
Because it's a farmed fish, right? So it comes from a fishery in New Zealand that has alpine salmon, West Coast king salmon, that were gifted to New Zealand by Teddy Roosevelt himself from the Sacramento River.
Yes.
And so
no, the American River in Sacramento.
The American River in Sacramento, yeah. And so this farm exists at the foothills of, they call them the Southern Alps, and it has a glacial runoff.
Mount Cook. Yeah, I've done my homework too.
I know. And so the water that these fish exist in is, you know, pure. It's pristine water. Because So the reason to have a farmed fish is because if we tie the population of wild populations to our population as we continue to grow and consume more, it's only inevitable. It's just a mathematical equation.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be a total bummer, but the wild populations right now are declining exponentially. So, I mean, you got to look at the longevity of the wild population. I've been to many a fish farm, and there's different ways of doing it with the excrement and the dead zones that are created underneath it and the different ecosystems that are created by a farm. But I will also admit that particularly with the drought and particularly with the increased temperatures we've been seeing, the West Coast wild salmon population is really struggling. So the mixing of two species right now, it's like, if we're going to continue to consume salmon, we have to be going to farmed fish.
Man, it's such a common sense thing. It's like
we're shipping our fry out of state because they're not going to live in our decimated hot rivers.
It would be like if we decided we're not going to eat beef anymore and we're just going to go for the venison, and the deer would be gone.
Right.
You can't have.
Well, you have to have other options.
You have to have other.
We
options.
Can't just rely on wild anything anymore.
But so this fishery is producing the best fish I've ever tasted.
And this fish has also been there now for about 100 years. I mean, it's not like it's a newly introduced exotic species.
Exactly. And so that to me is kind of a model. It's a model for the type of thing that we need to be doing more of. Is finding these
sustainable partnerships.
Exactly. And these sort of
between SC Fish Co. and this New Zealand fishery.
Yeah. Well, so the guy who started Santa Cruz Fish Co. is one of the OGs of organic foods in general. He packaged the first organic products anywhere.
Wow.
It was apple juice, and it was called Mr. Happy. And he had a health food store that was, I think, somewhere in the Midwest.
I feel about that, Mr. Happy.
And that he actually had the artwork was by Robert Crumb. Mr. Happy was this like hippie, long beard, summer of love type of character. Do you know Robert Crumb?
Mm-hmm.
Crumb?
Yes.
So that was his logo.
Okay. Mr. Happy.
So he is this.
Could be referring to a lot of things.
Yeah, definitely. But he's this legendary guy, and he, thinking globally, thinking about these problems and these solutions.
Supply chains, these lack of supply chains.
Yeah, and just,
where does everything come from? Do you feel good about it? Do you feel good about consuming it?
And what's our impact on the world around us?
But don't you think it's a privilege to be able to ask ourselves that question? And
I think it's a responsibility.
Well, maybe.
I don't think that privilege is not something that you should disavow because you have it. I think it's something you should use for the general good.
Agreed. But we also have access to and can afford to buy organic food, for instance. And we also have the privilege and education to know about the environment and what's happening, and to be able to weigh all of these factors and choose a certain choice. So that in and of itself is money and privilege in my mind. You know what I mean? It's just like...
I see it more as having money and privilege is more about having a responsibility to make the right choices.
I agree.
To support the things that are going to benefit the general good. Because as organic markets grow, they become more common, so that, Safeway's O brand is like huge.
Yeah. Did you read the article about the Silicon Valley vertical farms they're growing? inside. Oh, it's like came out a couple weeks ago, but just like the future of farming, it's just like low soil, vertical, just thinking outside the box. I'll send you the article. We can talk about it next time.
Part of it is, having food supplies that are closer to the market, right?
So why is, you have to get it from New Zealand to here. Isn't that a large carbon footprint?
Well, that is a very specific type of farming that can't just be done anywhere.
So how do they get the fish from New Zealand to Santa Cruz?
Cargo, which is a very fuel efficient way of shipping, because it floats on the water, and so therefore.
What if it's stuck outside a port in LA for weeks at a time? It's a specific situation, right? Where distribution.
It's not though. It got through. The last shipment got through, but as far as the overall picture, if you want to mitigate the depletion of that species, you have to have a farm source for it. But as far as like growing lettuce and tomatoes, that can be done anywhere. You don't need glacial runoff.
Once upon a time I designed a tilapia farm where you could have the tilapia underground, and then their wastewater would fertilize and water a crop, like corn, above it.
Yeah.
And then tilapia being omnivores, you could feed them the corn at the same time and then eat it.
That's what I'm saying. There's all kinds of problems that have been solved by systems like that. Like, I remember this story about this.
Just plop it in any third world country. If you think about it as an installation, and you have your protein on your bottom, and you have your vegetables on top, and all you need is a water source.
That's a modular thing that you could put anywhere. And then there are also other solutions to environmental problems that have been created by agriculture that engineers and, it's interesting because it's like farming families end up having, when they do well, they end up sending their kids away to school and they become engineers or doctors or whatever. And I remember this story about this pig farmer's family who sent him, he became an engineer and he came back to the pig farm. The pig farms, they have these huge, like, horrible swamps of pig shit. And it's a huge polluter. The methane is just massive. But so what he did is he found a way to trap that gas and then to use it as a fuel to grow tomatoes that then would offset the CO2. And he created this closed loop system that took what was an environmental polluter and turned it into a fuel source. And that's sexy.
That is sexy.
Because
resourceful.
You took a problem and you made money out of it. And I think that is.
So let's bring it back to the salmon. Where can people find out more about it, buy it, support it? Santa Cruz Fish Co.
You should check out santacruzfishco.com. It's a website where you can order directly, have it shipped straight to your door. If you want to try it out in restaurants first to, vet the salmon, they have a great fillet at the Hideout Aptos. They have a salmon pokey at the Crow's Nest. And Betty Burgers uses the salmon burgers. So if you want to try the fish out and then...
In 3 totally different styles.
Yeah. The salmon burgers are great because kids like them. And, they're full of omega-3 oils.
Salmon's great.
What's that?
Salmon's great.
Yes.
And it can be done in so many different ways.
It's wonderful, wonderful food. And so, it's just people finding things like that. And as soon as you understand that whole picture, to me, it becomes a no-brainer. It's like, why wouldn't I go for the better option,
It's not always readily available. It's more expensive. It takes thought and planning.
But once you've achieved all those things, right, like you figured out.
I'm just being devil's advocate.
Well, it's a good it's good to push back on it because it isn't happening, and so the why is important. But I think mainly it is because people haven't seen that whole picture yet. I think once you see it, you can't ignore it.
Well, they're also not always looking for the bad news, right? I mean, not everybody is like, I'm going to calculate how much carbon. I mean, now you know, and you feel terrible. And now I know. And I'm comparing my weekly driving compared to those two commutes, and I'm like, how much? And so the other side of sustainability is less sexy, but has all these other benefits.
Like what? Tell me what you mean.
Well, convenience and affordability, but then there's also just the basic understanding and wherewithal of, yes, you're making a good choice, but I think a lot of people would rather choose like ignorance is bliss, and I don't want to know where my food came from, or, like just grab the salmon out of the freezer and feed the family, and not necessarily know the like negative side of the whole circle, right?
Yeah, and I think
that's not sexy, but having the knowledge of it and using that knowledge is sexy, and seeing places like Santa Cruz Fish Co. gathering that knowledge and using it and creating this product that's valuable and worthwhile in the ways that we think so. But they also have educated themselves in that full circle and have weighed the pros and cons of those choices.
For sure. And it's
hard.
Everything is a work in progress. Everything is.
You gotta face the ugly, the ugly truth of what you're contributing to that fossil fuel footprint.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and that's the interesting thing, especially about the way you phrase that, because it's not. You said not everybody wants to look for the bad news, but it's not even like it's news. It's more like
accepting
what you're doing.
Truth.
It's not new. Exactly. It's not news. Yeah. It's truth. It's recognizing the truth about the consequences of our actions.
Yes. And acknowledging it and taking responsibility for it.
And then either deciding, so then it's still a toss-up, right? Because for me to ride my bike down here is going to take a great toll on me. And
probably all of us. Let's be honest.
Exactly.
You're going to come here on Tuesday nights and be like, oh, I'm so tired. And I'll be like, you're really going to bike home in the dark? Oh, my goodness. But okay. All right, so let's talk about sustainability with artists in our community. How can they be sustainable?
Well, there's a lot of organizations here that are Rick, lift that thing open. That are
you gotta wait anyway.
Doing it, that are
like what? Like whom?
Well, let's see. So like you gonna eat that whole one?
Well, it's just a little crumbly, so
okay.
I'm not gonna eat the whole one. I'm
just
not
curious.
You.
No,
I'll share with you. But you gotta reach in there because it's crumbly.
Oh.
It's really good. The churro, Big Pete's. Thanks.
I think that
a little low blood sugar. You're like, I'm just gonna start with like 30-gram chunk. What?
How can artists be more sustainable?
Well, when it comes to artists, I think sustainability is how can they produce art and sell art and maintain a healthy, sustainable lifestyle. So you're not working so hard that you're like breaking yourself, but you're selling enough to pay for your studio space. And we were talking about that earlier, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So, but you have to have a system that's sustainable, a business model that's sustainable.
Yeah.
Practice, a routine. I don't know. You tell me. You're the marketing guy.
Well, okay, so it's like, I was thinking about this when we were talking with C. Because at a certain point, when you're an artist and you're making work, you understand that there's a rhythm to your work. Like, you can make so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And so you
can make so much, or you can only make so much?
You can only make so much.
Okay. Thank you for clearing.
There's a limit to how much you can make of things that would qualify for what you want to present.
Right. You can't necessarily make a masterpiece every day.
No. And so you have to decide, okay, so if I can only make this many a year, mm-hmm. how much do I need to charge for each piece to make my year's budget? In most cases, it's going to be insane.
Okay.
And you'd have to sell every piece.
So how do we get around that?
Well, that's where I think that it's pretty unrealistic to think you're going to make your budget off of selling art.
From the beginning.
From the beginning.
From the get-go.
Period. It's going to be 1% of artists who achieve that. So I don't think that you necessarily want to have that as your goal. I think it's more about how can you create a sustainable lifestyle where you have an art practice that fits within it and has a place of priority within your scheme of things. But you know, I don't know. It's interesting because it's like when people did it through the gallery, it was even worse in a way, because the gallery then would, once the gallery has something that sells, mm-hmm. they want to do that again.
Right.
So then you're going to get locked into like this one mode of making.
Right. Yes, you could, if it's successful from the beginning.
When things are successful in the art world and galleries, usually there's a lot of pressure to repeat that.
Right.
And when the artist wants to do something different, it's like, what do you, no.
Yeah.
You know, the market pressures exist. And so I think it's more about, well, I think you need to create something that you can mass produce, for one thing.
Like prints.
Prints, yes. Clothing.
Stickers.
Books.
Mugs. Hats. Ball caps.
Yeah. So you have to merchandise your work. But beyond that, I think it's more like, the question that I'm more interested in is, how do artists use their platform to
work for them when they're not actively working?
Yeah, and to join in with this movement of people who are thinking about new ways to do things. You know, it's like art gets associated with cannabis, and that also is associated with sustainability, the green movement.
Well, I think all of those things come with community partnerships and collaborations, you know, and like cannabis and jazz, right? It's always a stronger, sustainable model if you have two strong partners.
Totally.
Especially if they have two different niches that they market. For instance, the shop has their retail space. Mm-hmm. Then they have the co-op space where there's rent coming in from the studios, mm-hmm. and the artists that rent them. And then they do workshops. So it's a multiple, it's not just, like you're saying, it's not just I do acrylic paint on canvas and that's my jam and that's all I'm going to try to sell. You know, it's partnerships between many artists and many different mediums, and then you throw some classes in there and some workshops and some other stuff to make it all make enough money to sustain itself.
Yeah, you got to have a lot of different hustles.
Well, and in this day and age, it goes back to that engagement pod or platforming.
Yeah.
I mean, you can either have an unspoken pact with your people, or you can, you know, lay it out there that's like, hey, we're going to really do this. You know, with the shop, they have food vendors as well as artists, and they're all sharing their stuff. I mean,
it's why
for an engagement pod to work effectively, you have to have at least 7 people invested in liking and sharing each other's content. Mm-hmm. And right now, in this day and age, when we're still reopening the world and deciding what society is going to be like next, we're still very involved with social media and being online. And so I'm going to see if you like something or I tag you, and so it goes that, you know, you spend time. Again, you create time every day to just like your friends' stuff and keep that algorithm going. You need to have likes within a certain amount of time, or you're gonna fall off the scene.
If you put up a post and then all of a sudden it just starts going wild and getting a lot of likes and a lot of comments, that's a sexier feeling than crickets. Like engagement, interactivity, connectivity.
And you will not be in the algorithm if people aren't liking your stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So it has to happen within a certain
action.
time frame.
Yeah.
So, for instance, when I produce a program that's going to be virtual, I say to my staff, tune in, bump you up, comment, bumps you up even more, share. Yeah. Well, then your mind is blown and you're definitely on the algorithm now. But if I post a program and no one interacts with it within the first couple minutes, then it's not going to pop up on people's feeds. It's seen as just like wasted media in the social media algorithm. Yeah. So it's important to have those, for this, agreements
100%.
Or those pause, and to be like, hey, I'm putting this out tomorrow. Yeah. And like, I'll keep my eye out for it, and I'll like it, and I'll comment, and all of a sudden, you know. And if you tag me in it, then you're going to be reaching my group anyway, you know, just with that tag. Don't post something without tagging someone, or a place, or a hashtag. I mean, that too will kill your interaction.
Totally. And that's why I think that art movements in general need people like you.
Thank you.
And like the Cali Roots organizers. Because otherwise, you know, there had to be a festival organizer to get Jimi Hendrix here.
Sure.
To spark that moment.
Yeah.
Right? So really, it's the organizers who I think have the most clout. And I think that that's where, as an artist, so back to the moving towards sustainability for an artist, I think that it really behooves an artist to find somebody who is actively promoting, organizing, and then don't feel ashamed or too cool to share stuff.
No. And don't feel ashamed to ask people to share your stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, people...
It's business, baby. Just do it.
Ask me to go to their events or, you know, post a flyer. And, you know, I have my own algorithm, my own...
standards or vetting or...
You know, no, just like routine. My own style. Not like my own brand, but my own style of like how I like and when I like to do my posts. And so I'll be like, yeah, I plan on doing that like tomorrow or something.
Right.
But, you know, I always appreciate someone who reaches out, like Becoming Jake's Beer, and says, hey, let's do this. Yeah. And also, I'll say, as an organizer and working with organizers, it is important to us to minimize our carbon footprint.
Yeah.
So
yes, it's very important.
So with the Good Vibes, it's all local folks. You know, we don't. And even moving forward with some of the bigger events, it's like we now know and we have all of these local vendors and all these local creatives and all these local artists. If we don't have to ship people in, and you don't have to ship in the talent and put them up at a hotel for 5 days and all of their staff and all of their blah blah. And that's a huge chunk right there. And you're
supporting the home,
supporting the community, you know, even more so.
Exactly. That's the win-win. That's the homegrown cultivation of a movement. And of course, you have to have the artists, but you need to have the visionaries who see the overview and can put together a calendar and then get people on board. But so for the individual artists who are part of that, they need to recognize their place in the bigger scheme of things and do their part.
Right. And with that being said, it might behoove people, if they're not already on the festival, show, or don't have the capability to be mobile, that's, the pop-up, the fair, the festivals, like that is what people are doing right now. It's safe-ish, it's outdoors. Again, you can tap into local creatives. You can spend money directly back into your community. I wouldn't buy soap for myself, but I'll go and buy some soap for, your birthday.
Yeah.
And I'll know that went back to someone living in Seaside, so.
Boom. There's something so cool about that, of knowing directly where your money's going.
Right.
And actually supporting somebody to then go buy more soap making materials.
Right. And then you throw their sticker on your car and they get stoked whenever they see it around town and it spreads.
Yes. And that, because we always have this, conflict of like bigger businesses trying to take over territory. There's a lot of small businesses in Monterey right now. Mm-hmm. It's pretty thriving. There's like a lot.
Unfortunately, with the pandemic, many were shuttered, but there is a resiliency in this community. And again, we're lucky. We're a small community where there's a lot of really well-educated people here. And that they were always looking to spend their money back into the community. For me, any stimulus money that I made, I tried to put back into my community, whether that was purchasing theater tickets or whatever endeavors people were doing over the pandemic. That's what I did. So I think that if you're not, from going back to the artist, like you need to be able to be mobile and be out there and reaching people in that way. Mm-hmm. And conversely, and so.
Yes,
I feel like I'm talking a lot tonight.
I think you are, and that's good.
Mm.
So, how
we
does that...
We didn't even talk about Halloween yet.
That's true. No, we haven't.
It's coming up.
Very soon.
Like in a couple days.
Yeah.
And so, what's happening? What are you doing for Halloween, Jake?
Halloween in Santa Cruz gets pretty wild.
Yeah, I bet. Like Lost Boys type deal?
You know what? I don't even know what it is, but honestly, it's people from all surrounding areas come to Santa Cruz, and then it's always like there's gang fights and people get stabbed downtown. It's kind of a...
That's scary.
Yeah, it's not.
That's not what it's like here.
I know, it's gnarly. That's why people who love it, get drunk and
good thing it's not real.
go do their thing downtown, and it's a wild scene. But for me as a dad, I'm more, interested in the kids trick-or-treating.
I thought we were going to talk about that. You just called yourself out.
Well, I don't want to talk about my kid, but being a dad is also what makes you want to think about sustainability, obviously, right?
Because, that too, yeah.
I want
you want
grandkids.
Your child to have salmon.
Yeah, I want, grandkids who have a future. That seems like a pretty simple desire, but...
Maybe that's the American dream now. For our grandkids to have a decent life that's not like on fire and with no large animals left.
I think that should be.
Sharks.
Yeah.
That's the new American dream, people.
Let's make that the dream.
It's no longer about making enough money to buy a home. It's about making sure that your grandchildren have food to eat that came from the ocean. Maybe. Be wild.
Exactly. That there's still something out there. It's amazing. It's just amazing what we can do.
Still.
Yeah. I mean,
yes.
For anything that we have been able to do destructively, we could take that same energy and be constructive with it. And
yes, but I think that also takes a positive mindset, and that might be a little hard for people right now in general. I mean, okay. Yes, I think we can improve, but some people might just be totally comfortable being like, we're fucked. Oh my gosh, that was the first swear. We made it a long time.
Wow, that was a long time.
Sorry.
Then there's always
for
going to be
explicit.
people who don't get on board with the program, you know, but yeah, you know, what do you do about them? I think eventually they
get in gang fights at Halloween and
yeah, they kind of take care of themselves. I feel like eventually, you know, like
weed themselves out of the equation. All right, so let's talk about what's happening in Monterey because it's not gang fights and scary things.
yeah, that's what's going on in Monterey for Halloween. It sounds like some fun stuff.
There is some fun stuff. Well, being on the weekend, I think that Monterey is really taking advantage of the Saturday night, the 30th. So there's a lot of fun adult things happening on the 30th.
That's nice.
The Synergy Studios, which is a new collective studio space in Pacific Grove, believe it or not, is hosting the Carmel Delights Dance Company. And they do burlesque, mostly. So they're going to do
really cool.
a Halloween-themed burlesque. And I went to an event they did a few weeks ago. And it was really strange driving into Pacific Grove to, like, go out. But it was happening. I mean, it's right across from the newly renovated Pacific Grove Library. And it used to be martial arts studio.
Oh, cool. Dojo.
And now there's different artists. There's painters. There's the Delights. There's different performance. There's high ceilings, so they have, like, silks and different apparatus they can hang from, and a Mistress Boutique has also got a space in there now. They have a lyra and some poles that they're going to put in and start doing workshops and stuff. So they're doing burlesque on the 30th. Doors at 8, show at 9.
Sounds like a good time.
Monterey, yes, is the local LGBTQ plus allies, etc. group, and they are having a Halloween party, dance party at Lynn's Arcade, which is a pinball arcade in Seaside.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, and they serve a lot of beers, and you can go in there and play like all your old school pinball games.
That's cool.
So also on Saturday night, they're having their DJ and dance party there, and that's a very friendly crowd. And then at Pearl Hour is DJ Hanif Wondir, and he's just the best DJ. If you read the MC Weekly, he was voted as the best DJ / club in Monterey County. He's not his own personal club, but he definitely rocks it. And he spun at the West End on the Here and Now stage.
Nice.
I talked about Here and Now Productions earlier when we were outside. But yeah, he does a lot of weddings and stuff around this area. But when he can like throw down his own set without anybody giving him like requests or set lists and stuff, it's always sick. It's a lot of, well, I don't know. You'll have to show up.
Yeah, that's
so,
awesome.
Yeah, those are
DJs it's such an interesting art form.
Yes.
And they've become such powerful artists and influencers.
He also does projection mapping, which he's going to do at the Pearl Hour. So he DJs while doing projection mapping of all sorts of things. He's done it on statues. He's done it on flat walls. He's done it on murals. But yeah, he and Kevin Proctor have some new ventures with
nice
projection mapping.
It's multimedia, not just the music. That's fun.
That's how he rolls.
So there's something about the DJ, right, that to me is like the stand-up comic, in that they get the response from the crowd. That's the point.
Yeah. Well, it's interactive.
Yes. If the
Feed
the
off
audience
of each other.
doesn't laugh, the comedy's not working.
Right.
If the crowd isn't dancing or getting wild, the DJ is not doing their thing, right? So they know immediately whether it works or not. It's one of those kind of satisfying art forms. Whereas, like, if you're a writer, you don't even ever really know. You get some feedback or whatever, but you never get to experience somebody having their mind blown by something that you wrote.
Yeah.
So there's kind of this immediacy to that form, which is also, it's why the stakes are so
you
high.
Also are making people happy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's your job.
Yeah.
That's a hard job.
Well, but the thing is, right away whether it worked or not, too. So the stakes are kind of higher because if you fail, you're falling on your face.
I'm always going to fail this week.
Right in front of everybody.
They're pros. Pros across the board.
Well, pros can handle high stakes without a problem. But that's kind of it's just sort of what makes that energy to that type of activity. I think it's such a cool art form.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we are in the age of immersion and immersive art, and people are really into that experience now.
Tell me more about that. Why do you think that? Why do you say that so confidently?
Didn't we talk about this on the last podcast? We did.
Because of the Van Gogh show.
And I think that art will connect with more people if you can make it immersive. If people just assume that art is something to be witnessed or to be recognized as something that someone else does and that you should appreciate, then it's not the same as experience necessarily of being like having it surround you and it's a different, you'll have different emotions to it also, to have like light and music and it's all around you versus, and not this is bad, walking up to, a static frame on the wall and being like, oh, I really like, the way the sky looks in this one. And then you move on to the next one. Not that that's bad, but it's just not, it's traditional and it is reaching a smaller and smaller group of people. And not only that, but museums were closed for a long time. So you went outside and you were muraling and you're projection mapping and people love it. They want to be a part of the art experience. And I went to the art battle. Gerardo Zambrano, who's here, G, did the local art battles for a long time, again, before COVID. And just, you have the painters in the middle, and the people in the room are supposed to walk around clockwise during the 8 or 10 minutes or whatever that they're painting in this competition. And you get to see the paintings evolve with each pass, right? And so, you're interacting in a totally different way than you normally would with paintings because it's a movement and you're moving with a group and you're seeing 8 artists live art and it's changing every time you go. So it's just, creating, and the people that showed up were young and hip and fun and interesting, and it wasn't necessarily the school groups or the high-end galleries where it wouldn't be that same mixing or even the same amount of people all in one place at one time.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, different demographics and there's all kinds of different art.
Right, but people want immersion right now.
But which people want that?
People that are sad and tired of what we've been through for the last 2 years and want to have an experience.
Okay.
That.
Interesting. Well, it's, I'm listening, because when you say that, I'm like, oh, to me that doesn't register for me, but I trust you, and so I'm listening. But
you also enjoy art in all of its realms, and so you appreciate art, traditional art.
Yeah.
And will seek it out.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the norm anymore. But if someone was like, hey, I heard the Van Gogh experience is so fucking cool, then, all their friends are going to bring the kids and they're going to bring the teenagers, and even the teenagers put up with it because it's just an experience they don't get before. Or often.
Oh, yeah, I'm not anti that at all.
No, I'm just saying it's like red meat, It's it's easy to ingest, but it's also satisfying. It's it overwhelms your senses. You feel like you're inside the art.
Nice.
And I don't think that most people seek art in that traditional way. You know, teenagers aren't like, hey, Mom, I really want to go to the Museum of Fine Art this weekend.
Maybe not teenagers. They're probably looking more at comic books or artists in a different way. But I think there's two different categories, right? Oh, my hands are starting to get very expressive.
I know, just stay away from the microphone.
No, but so
this is the no-go zone.
Like for me, one of the things that I'm interested in psychology, right? I'm interested in how humans work, why they do things, the things that they don't know why they do, right? The unconscious as well as the
subconscious, yeah.
And so for me, like reading a novel, studying characters, looking at a series of paintings, an art show, is more of like me trying to figure out what is this person all about? Like, why are they doing this? And so with the immersive art, I never really feel that question of like, what is going on with this person? Like think about it. Now, music might be one of those cases where it is both immersive and something that you kind of study, right?
Yes, and also it's enjoyed in many different settings, whereas if you are at a concert surrounded by people all enjoying the same piece, then you're surrounded by the experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But so like a Danzig album or a Danzig concert, right? So, if you love music, you love that energy, then being there surrounded by it is going to be the best experience. But if you're a musician and you're trying to figure out, what's this guy fucking about? Like, how did he do this? What chord structures is he using? How is this layering, creating this fucking effect? That's a different way of thinking about it, right? And so that's more, I think, when an artist is experiencing art, they're also trying to figure out how it was done, why it was done. And they're comparing their own psyche to the psyche of whatever they're seeing. It's just different modes.
Well, and yeah, different modes of enjoying the art.
Yeah.
For different reasons.
Yeah.
Like there's people who love going to concerts.
Yeah.
And you're like, do you love going because you love the music, or do you love going to concerts because you get to lose yourself and jump in the mosh pit and leave it all on the floor?
It's about losing yourself or finding yourself.
Well, there you go.
We keep coming to these two things of like
people that want to lose themselves or find themselves with art.
In general, like same thing with sustainability, right? Like, do you want to be an ostrich and put your head in the ground and not know what you're doing, and just, which is being immersed in the thing, history, the flow of life, every day, whatever we do, or do you want to stop and look at it critically and go, what the fuck is actually happening here? And how can it be done better?
Critical thinking.
Yeah. So that's the difference is, what types of experiences are immersive and take you over, and what do we go to those experiences for? And
is it sustainable?
I think it's like, but we've done it forever. It's like the ancient Greeks. They had their Dionysian mysteries. They would have their festivals of plays, where they would all get intoxicated and watch these plays, and the reverie of losing oneself for a moment. But I think that's sort of where festivals, concerts, these temporary events where you can take the trip.
Van Gogh experience.
Yeah.
You're going to go and take the trip and lose yourself.
Yeah, and there's something...
While the art is happening around you, you're going to be okay with.
I'm seeing it. So maybe that is showing something about myself, in that I don't want that loss of control.
Maybe. Do you sound a little rigid right now?
Well, you know, it's like when you are responsible, you don't want to lose control, right? When you have good shit going on, you don't want to lose control. It's like, well, then I'm not going to be able to do the thing I got to do.
If you have good shit going on, are you also going to take the time in the moment to reflect on your life and make better choices? Or are you just going to say everything's fine, so why would I change what I'm doing if my life is good? Right? You're reflecting on and you're like looking at your life choices and sustainability, but if people are already happy, then they're not as inclined to be like, I could be doing better. How can I change something to make... It
just depends if you care for the common good.
Well...
Because the common good could always be better. I mean, clearly there's a lot of suffering that's happening.
But then humans are inherently selfish, and all we think about is our good first. And if we're good, then the common good isn't going to be good.
True, but I think that the higher selfishness comes when you are able to help people. I think it's a form of selfishness.
Or is it you're selfish because you want your grandchildren to have what you have?
That's selfish too.
Right. So
it's all selfish. What I'm saying is I don't know if there are higher or lower forms of selfishness.
I think we just need to change what we're selfish about. Right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, but because if
the American dream used to be like, I need at least a single family home.
Yeah.
And like this many kids, and by the time I'm 40, I need to have this much money in my retirement. And
Right. Exactly. So like,
but we proved that all of us don't meet those requirements, and many haven't before us, and they do okay.
It's not a realistic dream for everyone, right?
No.
Now, okay, so recently during this pandemic, I used the time to refocus a lot of things in my own life, and I did it through writing for the most part. But so one of the things I decided is that fitness is super important to me. And so I want to be fittest at 50.
Okay.
Okay? So at 50 years old,
I support you.
I want to be in the best shape of my life.
Okay.
And so you see, like, okay, well, if I stayed caught in the rat race of driving down here to make the most of it, not caring about the carbon, missing the opportunity to push myself on a bike farther than I ever have. You see what I'm saying? So
in the winter, in the rain.
Yeah, you got to get tough. This is the world we live in.
So just throw yourself out there in the harshest scenario first.
No.
Sink or swim.
Build your way up to it. Right? Like, so I do this. I did this workout, right? So I started doing this push-up workout a long time ago. But during the pandemic, I decided to double it. And I decided I was going to do... right now, today was the first day that I started back up because when I hurt my knee, I had to take some breaks off of this. But I'm trying to do 1,000 days in a row of this one workout, which is just 1,200 push-ups and 1,200 squats. But when
And what time did you wake up to make that happen?
I woke up at 3:30.
Is that sustainable?
As long as I get to bed at 9:30.
Well, then we better hurry.
Oh, we're good.
Oh, boy. Okay.
But no, that's it. It's like every decision you make creates some other thing that you have to then adjust for.
Right.
Right? So, but if that's when you need to be able to analyze and step back and look at the bigger picture and see the pattern. Right? And that's the beautiful thing about being experienced. Right? So it took me a while to get up to the 1,200 push-ups, right? Now I could probably do more if I pushed myself to do more, but I don't feel the need to. I feel like that's enough. But getting there, if I just tried to get from the beginning, if I just tried that would fail. So I gradually worked my way.
Right. It takes your commitment to it.
Yeah.
And patience. It's like the sugar. You want the sugar now, or you want to keep doing it, or you want to wait and have more later?
Exactly.
But here's something that I learned in my workshop on Friday.
Please tell me.
Is that the person, Patrick Shanahan from Art Storefronts, was saying, but these folks weren't, so I'm just backing it up a little bit there, okay. Jacob.
It was a good workshop.
Thank you. You can see it on our YouTube. That 50% of what artists need is emotional support. Because not everyone has the personality type to do it every day and stay with it and or also be patient, right? So you can tell people that they need to make one post every day. But how long will the average artist, you're an artist and you say, Erin, I want to get the stronger Instagram following. And I'll say, you need to post something every day. Whether it's a video, a reel, and you got to mix it up and blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And the average person will do that for how long, do you think? Be honest.
I don't know, but not
before they like fall off the radar, right? Because either they're too busy or it's not working or people aren't telling them that they're doing a good job, that they like their art, that, you know, it's not moving. So there needs to be, for most people, a support system in place. We can circle back to the engagement pod on that one.
Okay.
Right, but
that's a beautiful way of sort of collectively bumping up, right? Growing together.
Yes, and some people need others to keep them held. Accountability buddies. That's cute. Did you just make that up right now?
No, I didn't.
Oh, that's too bad.
But yeah, that's a big part of it.
Accountability buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah, an emotional sport because it is hard to put yourself out there and it is hard to promote your own work. Absolutely. And to get a variety of feedback
life is hard.
On this work. I mean, some of the best artists that I know in the area, particularly Paul Richmond, will post comments that he gets, negative comments that he gets about his artwork. Uh-huh. You know, sometimes just to show like what you have to deal with sometimes when you put yourself way out there.
For sure.
And it takes a thick skin or emotional support or a highly regimented type A personality who can do it every day for, what had you say, 1,000 days? Yeah. Right? So that also takes a certain personality, a goal-oriented.
You have to be able to stick to a decision.
Right. So you need to stick to a plan. You need to build people around you who are going to help support your plan.
Yeah. But and more than anything, you need to just. It's the weirdest thing is, it's as simple as deciding, but you have to stay in the process of deciding. I call it meeting your appointments. Right. So like when I'm doing push-ups, every push-up is an appointment, and be there for that. You know, you have a certain amount of time every day. If I don't get the workout done early enough, I won't have enough time. I won't have enough energy. So you have to prioritize, right?
Yes.
And this is what the heart of sustainability is.
Right. Prioritizing yourself and taking care of yourself.
And longevity. Prioritizing doing the things that are actually going to make the thing better.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. So, but I think that as far as it could be anything. Right? It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be public. I would say to an artist, you know, maybe do a drawing a day. Don't post it. You know, wait to the end of the year and look at all of it, and then post 20. There's a whole bunch of.
Or what if they have a backlog of art and they're just getting into the game? They have stuff.
Yeah, then maybe.
Or maybe they post and they also do something that's current. I mean, you can catch up on your archive, but you can also be putting yourself through, like the Youth Arts Collective here does 30 for 30. So the mentors and the students do 30 drawings a day for 30 days.
Cool.
And it's hard. Yeah. I mean, they will post about how it's like, I was really uninspired today, but this is what I did. Yeah. A lot of it's the mentors, obviously posting the kids, you know, to just show them the path, you know. But it's still a goal, and it's only 30 days. But like you blogged for 100 days, you know, like set a goal that you can attain. And for me, for people who ask me about how to get into marketing or getting into social media, it's just like pick what you think you can do and then just stick to it.
Yes.
For like a couple months.
At least.
Before you see any.
Don't expect anything.
No.
No, it's a slow process. Especially if it's going to be sustainable, it's going to be a slow growth process. And so you do have to prepare yourself for that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think that's where there is a certain element of faith or belief in yourself, in that the work, and that is helped by your experience, right? So it's like getting into shape physically is a very difficult thing. And at first, you don't feel like, oh, well, I'll be strong eventually. You feel like, oh, this is horrible.
Right.
This is painful. I'll never get there.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, for a lot of people, I think that deters them from doing enough to get to a place where you go, oh shit, I am stronger. Like, I just did that?
Mm-hmm.
That used to be impossible for me. That's a great feeling when you do something that used to be impossible for you.
Well, and also trying things out in social media or on your website or in marketing that you wouldn't normally do. And the first couple of times there's no traction. But as it becomes a recognizable thing, whether it's a live video or the OVR, they didn't like so much, the viewing room. The virtual viewing room, online viewing room.
Yeah.
You know, you got to try, and then you got to try again, and then you got to try again. But it will be, like you said, working out. It's a culmination. It's a cumulative effort. You can't just try Instagram for a month and be like, that didn't work. Everyone hates my art, you know, and it's just.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you got to stay. It's a long-term thing. And that's why having these goals of like, but see.
And a lot of our engagement pods were attracted to each other through what we posted and how we post and that. So you have to like gain your own personality in those niches before people seek you out.
You have to have a style. Style comes from a lot of practice. Okay, because we were talking about this earlier where I think I was saying something like art is having a hard time right now because so much is being produced and people don't know what's good. And you said your response was, well, what's good is subjective, which I liked, and it was a challenging response. But then it also made me think, okay, true, but every artist constantly makes those decisions for themselves, right? I mean, if I take 200 photographs, I'm going to narrow it down to 4. Well, why, if it's just subjective, then why don't I just put all 200 up? There's something about those 4 that clicks. It's the same guy taking all 200, right? So, but why? That's part of it, is the analysis of what is it that I like in art, and when I do it, how do I do it again and again? You know what I'm saying? Like,
how do you replicate it?
How do I keep coming up with successful results? That's what you want to replicate. You want to replicate that feeling. Sustainable. You got to win if you want to keep going. At some point, you have to have some successes.
You have to have something, that emotional support. It's all emotional support.
And I think it can come individually, too. I think engagement pod, clout farming is great. Now, one thing I also think is that, and this would be not you in any way. So, as I describe this practice, I just want to preface it that you don't do this at all. And it's part of what I dig about your style.
Okay.
And this isn't actually a criticism of this other mode, which is more confessional, journal, personal.
Mm-hmm.
Where I almost think that artists maybe should have a journal where they write all the negative, like there's this artist who I know who is just so negative. It's like complain. It's like a profession. You know, whereas you are always promoting. You're always pointing people in the direction of something good. You know, and you do it. This is where I think the repetitions make the style become consistent, because you're not going to post some whiny shit.
Right.
Because it doesn't fit your style.
Right.
It doesn't meet your objectives.
Right.
And so that's what...
It's not what I want to portray.
It's not what you want to portray.
Because it's not who I am.
It's not who you are, and it's not what you want to do.
Right. Yeah.
Pity party?
Yeah.
That's not the kind of party you're looking for.
No.
You like a party, but not a pity party. Am I right?
It's true.
So it's just about like...
I've been to a party or two. One or two.
But, you know, it's like about what are you trying to cultivate? What are you trying to create? And so if you're putting out complaints...
but some artists just think that's like the moody side of it. But I do agree. And going back to our first podcast of like using social media is like, does it bring you joy?
Right.
And if
or other people.
Follow people who bring me down, I'm not going to follow them.
No.
And I'm certainly not going to buy their stuff.
Oh my God. Oh, and it doesn't... People can bring me down and they're trying to be positive.
Well, that's about perspective.
No, I know, but it's also... It's about style.
Yeah. Style
Right?
matters.
Because I did this shoot with this model who we had this chuckle about an influencer who we both don't like the style, but it was funny because we both knew who they were immediately. They were somebody in common for us. But it's just a person who, whenever I speak negatively about a style, I'm never going to name a name. 'Cause that's not my agenda. I'm not trying to like troll people, trash people.
Well, that's not what we're doing here.
No.
Period.
But
I'd be very disappointed in you.
But this mode of engagement, to me, is counterproductive for the space, where it'll be like this.
If you want to have collaborators and partners,
Keep it quick.
That's
keep it
not
moving.
and keep it positive.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want people who are going to lift you up and bring out the best in you, it's not going to be the ones who are like, oh God, today's so awful. You know?
Oh, okay, this is what I think it is. Because it could be negative and dark and still be fucking cool. It's about, is it for you or is it for them?
I think that people earlier in their career, it's for them. And then as you become successful, you can do more stuff that's for you. Well, and I think you need to stick a little more mainstream and like pick your images that you know are going to do well when you're emerging, and save your freaky stuff for when you have followers and collectors and people that believe in you, and you can be like, yeah, I'm going to do what I want for a change. Same as like with DJing. Where do you make your bread and butter? You make your bread and butter every weekend playing songs that other people want to hear.
Social media
when do you get
is DJing
to beat social media DJing? Yes.
Social media is DJing. But you were going to say, when do you get to...
Be creative is only when they're DJing, right? Because otherwise they're just producing what other people want. And is that satisfying? I don't know. But you're saying like... LL Cool J again.
Social media is a form of DJing, though, because it is about that interaction and about that response.
Yeah. People are going to respond when they like your posts.
And that's actually, now that I think about it, that is how I see what you're doing. Like, you are spinning records. You're like...
Spinning spinning stories.
Totally. And that's a really interesting way to look at it. But it's just when somebody shows up in your feed, it's like, are they here to help somebody else?
Does it bring you joy?
To give me something?
Are they improving?
Or are they asking for something from me?
Or are they just tearing down for the sake of tearing down? Or are they just shoveling for attention? Or, it's just...
So for the artist to be sustainable, I think, get a fucking journal.
I also think, though, they have to be a little relatable. So it does help to have real content.
Yeah.
But people don't go to social media to support you through your bad times.
No.
So, I don't know. There is a limit to like how much you want to put out of your own personality and struggles to connect with people. But you gotta also be mindful that people aren't going on social media for you to be a fucking bummer.
Yeah, exactly.
Bring them down. Because perception, let's talk about your friend from 1972, is if you see him posting all that negative crap all the time, but then he does post something spectacular, your opinion will already be tainted by the fact that you don't like everything else he puts out there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So he's doing himself a disservice.
Basically, what you're doing every time you put something out in the public
is curating.
Is curating your own persona. This is how people are going to read you.
And it will live out there for a very long time.
And in places you don't even know. People are seeing it that you're interacting with, and you don't even know that they have this image of you that you created of yourself.
And how many times in our current day do we know people only by their handle?
All the time.
All the time.
That's how we meet people.
Oh, you're... I could throw out Sipping Crunch 831, who is also named Alex. But I didn't know that at first. Because at first it was like, oh, you're this moniker, And so, yes, I think that's almost... They'll see more of you virtually than they'll ever see of you in real life. And you have to be ready for whatever you put out there to be a preconceived perception when you go out into the community.
Absolutely. But let me just clarify real quick that it's not about light versus dark, right? It's about giving versus needing.
Giving versus asking.
Yeah.
Joy versus sorrow.
Yeah.
Pleasure versus pain.
No, but it's not that, because sorrow can be expressed in a giving way. Right? Like, think of a really sad song that, like Fleetwood Mac, right? Songs about breakups that are beautiful. And they give you feeling. It's not like you don't put it on and go, okay, I'm going to give you Fleetwood Mac my energy now. No, you put it on because you want to feel something. It gives you something, right? Even though they're coming from a negative place.
Or are you consuming it because you need it?
Well, it depends. But either way, it's giving you something.
Yes.
It's not taking from you. It's giving
There's
you something.
a reason why Fleetwood Mac is still so popular after all these decades.
And made Dogface pop off and all of that, right? Because Fleetwood Mac gave Dogface something he needed, and he gave us something we needed, which was a vibe, which was a feeling of freedom, of emotion that was negative, but was still flowing, it was still free. Right?
And people could connect and lose themselves in it.
But they also could aspire to it and go, that's a moment that I haven't felt in a while. What do I do that gets me to that place? Right? True happiness makes you check yourself. Like, oh shit, that person's really enjoying that moment. Am I enjoying this moment? I'm enjoying this moment. And that's what you got to do. You got to put yourself in a position where you can enjoy the moment. And that is when you're giving, right?
Yes. Or you're receiving.
Which is another form of giving.
Sometimes.
Good God.
Sometimes. Oh boy. Our boy Joey's back.
Okay. And I think that was a sustainability is sexy way to wrap it up.
Sustainability is sexy.
You keep it going.
Find 6 other people to create an engagement pod, and we'll see you next week.
And give.
Be givers. Big givers. This is E and J Branding. Thank you for joining us again, and we look forward to chatting again next week.
Peace.